This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, you know, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
All right, and welcome to it. The torrential rains, the monsoon season continuing to pound in South Carolina. Some places they say could end up with 30 inches of rain through the course of this event, which is just stunning amounts of water. Just absolutely stunning amounts of water. And the state of emergency, federal money available, just a once-in-a-lifetime event, to say the least. At least you would hope it's once in a lifetime, because you wouldn't want to have to go through that twice. That's for sure. So we're keeping an eye on all the things that are going on with the terrible storms there. Some of that rain and so forth, disturbances could back up into what we have here. But right now, mostly just scattered rain and fog. Good portion of what we had. Topping the conversation at this hour, Christians brutally targeted by apparently a God-hating maniac there at Umpqua Community College in Roseburg, Oregon this past week. Murdered for proclaiming their faith in Jesus Christ. For being Christians. Students at the college were lined up and asked if they were Christians. If they answered yes, they were shot in the head. If they answered no, from what we can understand so far, they were allowed to live. This didn't happen in some far-off land like Iran or Syria. It happened in Oregon. And before anything could be, before it was even a settled scene, for the most part, Barack Obama was on the airways taking the advice of his former chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel, who infamously said he never let a crisis go to waste. Like taking away the American Bill of Rights, for example. I mean, don't let that get away when you have a chance. He went on a lecture, and I don't disagree with the president so far as, we're all tired of seeing this sort of thing. But when he starts suggesting that, we could be like Australia or the UK, well, there it is. The only law that could have prevented this from happening is the complete banning of private ownership of firearms. Period. And you just wonder, what if this attack had occurred on Muslims and not Christians? What would the president be saying then? We'll continue to talk about that. Coming up at later in the day, we'll have more on this entire topic. Coming up in a few minutes, we'll have Liz Peek here. Talking about the Pope Francis giving his blessing to the president's climate crusade, or charade. But then President Xi Jinping of China jumped in, promising to roll out a nationwide cap-and-trade program by 2017. Although it's a joke, we'll talk about that. We'll get to that. But here's a story we haven't talked about here on this program yet, and I think it's extremely important. Major veterans groups are endorsing a House resolution forwarded by Republicans Vern Buchanan and Duncan Hunter to reinstate Army Sergeant Charles Martland, a Green Beret who is being discharged from the military because he stood up to a rapist in Afghanistan, a guy that was raping a boy. 3 of the country's main veterans organizations, Concerned Veterans for America, Veterans of Foreign Wars, the VFW, and AMVETS, threw their support behind the resolution demanding that the Army reverse, Martland's upcoming discharge scheduled for November the 1st. In 2011, you may have heard this story, I'm sure you have, Martland, a 2-time Bronze Star recipient, shoved an Afghan police commander to the ground after discovering that the commander, U.S. trained by the way, had kept the boy chained to a bed and used him as a sex slave. Makes your stomach turn. The commander also beat the boy's mother when he found out she had reported his behavior to the U.S. military. I think it's an absolute national disgrace. Buchanan has said on national media outlets they want to terminate him for doing the right thing. SFC Martland did the absolute right thing to confront a threat, and for that, the Army is going to show him the door so abruptly in no way to take care of the troops who have faithfully taken care of the mission for so long, said the national commander of the VFW, John Bezecki. The controversy takes place amid revelations that the Pentagon discouraged soldiers from paying attention to local Afghan cultural practices, which encourages rape of young boys, even on U.S. military bases. This is not an isolated event. Do some reading. You'll find out this is not an isolated event. This culture, this alleged culture, encourages the rape of young boys by men. See, that doesn't bring shame onto your family like having sex with a woman brings shame to the family. And then, of course, they have to kill the women if that happens. What a culture. What a culture. Now, up to this point, Buchanan had asked the House and Senate Armed Services Committees to launch an investigation into the policy, as military leadership continues to deny that such a policy ever existed, despite testimony from numerous members of the military. To ignore rape, even on U.S. military bases, from Afghan commanders and others. Raping children. Human trafficking is a scourge upon this earth. A scourge. And when a member of the U.S. military steps up and says, enough, that's wrong, we should applaud that person, not run them out of the military. That person should be applauded for their bravery, for standing up to a disgusting, gut-wrenching practice of raping children. You know, in many parts of the world, drugs are popular, guns are popular. Nothing has more value than children that are being exploited, which is why we've worked so hard in this state and elsewhere to stop human trafficking. Because the exploitation for sex slaves occurs from Afghanistan all the way across the world. This man, Martland, should be applauded. And you should join the call to keep him in his position. And we, as Americans, should talk about human rights and the human rights of boys in Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria and throughout the Muslim world who are being victimized every day, sodomized, victimized, and turned, as we heard there, into sex slaves. Makes your stomach turn. It really does. Just makes my stomach turn. It is 14 after the hour. This part of the program brought to you by Mesa. Good health, good business, and great schools. Mesa bringing you this portion of the program. Thank you for their support. And later on the program, we will shift gears back to the woolly mammoth being found near Chelsea this past week. He walked around Ann Arbor, this woolly mammoth did, probably 10 or 12,000 years ago. More on that straight ahead. It's the Steve Gruber Show on a Monday.
Covering Michigan and the world from his bunker below the bridge. Here is Steve Gruber.
It's Monday. Welcome back to it. Yeah, I'm sure that what is happening in South Carolina will be used to further the discussion on climate change, because it's, torrential rains and record-setting rain. So therefore, this is clearly evidence of climate change. Don't let it bother you that for 11 years now, Florida has not had a hurricane of significance, the longest stretch also in recorded history. 19 after, and time for Liz Peek to join us here on the program, one of my favorites. Liz, welcome back.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So, they'll use things like what's happening with these torrential rains in South Carolina, they being the administration, Hillary Clinton and others, to underscore, carbon controls and cap and trade programs. And apparently they've gotten President Xi from China to jump on board, but giving him a pass on cyber theft at the same time. It's a strange world I live in, Liz. Nobody's accountable for anything. It's a world of appeasement.
Well, it's a world of sort of smoke and mirrors, I think. The President Obama, has made climate change such an important part of his agenda that he's willing to sacrifice or spend political capital on almost anything to get what he thinks will be a legacy-changing climate agreement, global climate agreement in Paris this coming December. And and in the course of this, what he's doing is basically throwing under the bus all kinds of other issues that really matter to Americans and to American security. And in the latest confrontation with President Xi Jinping of China, that's what we saw. He basically went in there vowing to impose sanctions on because of cyber thefts, and basically call out the Chinese on these enormous intrusions that they've made into our institutions. And of course, he did none of that. But in return, what he got, which is what he really wanted, was a very sort of milquetoast agreement from Xi Jinping on climate change that the Obama administration can bandy about as being a real breakthrough, and it isn't. I mean, that's the discouraging thing. It just isn't.
So it's more of the same? It's lip service? It's appeasement? What is it?
Well, first of all, you have to kind of look at the fact that for the Chinese, it is extremely important that they look like they're doing something about climate change. This is probably the biggest source of social unrest in China now. But by the way, Americans really need to sort of know that this is not like a few streams that are polluted or the air's a little. We're talking you're not able to see across the street in Beijing and Shanghai. I've been there. It is just absolutely horrible. And the amount of toxicity in the air means that actually people are leaving those cities because it's just so unhealthy to live there. The airport's closed because of bad visibility, all kinds of data points. So the Chinese have it in their self-interest to start making some moves towards reining in coal burning and other things that are particularly polluting their air. It's nothing to do with what the United States wants or what we're encouraging them.
Isn't it interesting that the solution to China being a dirty place, to global warming in general, is to, for example, shut 9 coal plants in Michigan? We're shutting 9 by April, and we're told now from the utilities that rolling blackouts in 2016 could be the new normal.
Think about that, right? And think about, by the way, if you were a manufacturing company, and one of the reasons manufacturers look to the United States as a good place to move is because we have cheap energy, which, of course, the Obama administration is throwing out the window as fast as they can. But they surely are not going to be enticed to move to your state if there's an insecure source of power. Isn't it just insane? I mean, really. Oh,
it is insane, and that's the whole point. Rolling blackouts, you can't bring a company here to expect to run anything. And of course, but the power companies, of course, that are, paid for by the consumers like myself, that are basically, for all intents and purposes, a monopoly, are getting brand new power plants out of the deal. So they're happy to get new power plants that, I pay for and my fellow friends pay for here in Michigan.
Well, that's the thing. Until electricity prices really start to go up, which, by the way, they have now after decades of very low electricity price increases, now we're seeing an acceleration. Americans will not be aware of the price they're paying for all these green efforts. And, it's not just in air and power. I thought it was interesting, this whole big flap about Volkswagen cheating on their emissions regulators. Guess what? It turns out maybe the car companies really can't make these reach these standards that the Obama administration has just sort of unilaterally decreed. And of course, California is going even farther now, putting American auto manufacturers, basically in very tough shape. So they're going to have to be raising car prices. All of this stuff comes at a cost.
It does.
And it's not very visible, but it will become increasingly visible. And in the United States, it's to what end? It's not as though we're going to end up with enormously changed air, water, et cetera. We're not China. We don't have this problem right now.
No, we don't have this problem. And here's the thing. I walk outside of Michigan. I've never worried about the quality of the air or the water or anything else here. And Volkswagen, by the way, could potentially be bankrupt. It's very, very real possibility out of this deal that company that builds one car in 9 on the planet could be driven right to its knees. So it's foolishness. It's abject foolishness, and in pursuit of what political goal? I can't figure out. What they want us to have, horses in the street again? Dysentery would be nice this time of year.
Well, I tell you what, I actually was thinking about this last week. We're going to look back. Someone's going to look back, not you and I, 100 years from now, and say, this country had it all. It had everything going for it. And what did they do? In pursuit of what we now know to be a really questionable goal, they sacrificed their energy advantage, their cheap power, their enormous magnet for attracting businesses and people from all over the world, and they just threw it away. And I really think that could be the case.
And I hope it's not too late. I hope that a sensible commander-in-chief, a sensible president could turn things around. I guess we'll find out, Liz. I appreciate the conversation, although it's chilling oftentimes.
It's discouraging, isn't it? But here's the message. We need a Republican president, folks.
There it is. Liz Peek, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Columnist, FoxNews.com and the Fiscal Times. Liz Peek, one of my favorites here, no question. Not necessarily a Tea Party president, not necessarily considered a Republican president to start down the road. You can't even start the conversation until you get somebody that can win the office. 25 after on a Monday.
Michigan, born and raised with Midwestern values and Michigan common sense.
I gotta get down. I gotta get down. Gotta get down to the mud.
He is 33 after the hour. And just a busy Monday, that's for sure. Busy Monday. This hour brought to you in part by Consumers Mutual Insurance. Consumers Mutual Insurance, a different kind of insurance company. It was the one that after, there's so much confusion out there, I decided to check it out. It's a co-op, so, as a co-op, you have a vested interest in what goes on. 40,000 Michigan residents now are customers of Consumers Mutual Insurance, plus hundreds of businesses. So you clearly can check it out, consumersmutual.org, to find out more. We're going to shift gears here a little bit and talk about some challenges that face a lot of folks. Probably you know somebody, or it could be you yourself, know somebody who has a special needs child. A child that people worry, is that child ever going to be able to learn enough to take care of themselves, to look after themselves, to do the basics, to make a living? It's a real concern for folks. And there are some resources out there, including right here in Michigan at Wyandotte, at Henry Ford Wyandotte Hospital. Larry Semetko is here, one of the Joe Brighton Skills Center teachers, and he works here at Henry Ford. Larry has worked with these students for years, understands special education laws, and has seen what job training leads to for these kids. Larry, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you so much.
It's such an important topic, I really believe, and, I don't think people take time to reflect on it. I have a couple of different friends that have children, that I'm sure that they worry about these very subjects. But there is hope out there, is there not?
There is, for sure. There are many wonderful programs, and there's tremendous advocacy throughout the state.
So give me an idea. Tell me, first of all, about this place where you teach at Henry Ford Hospital, Henry Ford Wyandotte Hospital, to be specific. Tell me about this program, what it offers, not only to the students directly, but to their families, to their parents, and so forth.
Okay. In a nutshell, the Josephine Brighton Work Skills Center is a part of the Wyandotte Schools. This is our, I believe, our 44th year in existence as a program. This is our 26th year at Henry Ford Wyandotte Hospital, where we call a community-based classroom. And what we do is we have opportunities for our students to work in the various departments within the hospital, whether that be food services, or whether it be pre-admissions or pharmacy or some other nursing floor within the hospital environment.
So what kind of challenges, I think is a fair way to put it, right? What kind of challenges are these kids facing when they arrive at your class? What kind of different things are we talking? Autism? Are we talking, what are we talking about here?
Our students are classified as moderately cognitive impaired, And what we do have is that we do have individuals with Down syndrome, students within the autism spectrum disorder, traumatic brain injury, and our students will have just a multitude of very, very interesting skills that they can do, but also they will have deficits in many areas which they can't do, primarily academics. So our students will have the opportunity to work within the hospital environment, to work with the hospital staff, to see the visitors at the hospital, and to learn so much about not only the world of work, but also the social skills, the interaction with people, greetings, and so forth.
So, I mean, this is, so you have a pretty wide range of students, but I've seen some pictures here, and I think that, for what you guys are doing, the return, I mean, let's be honest. Teachers don't all do it for the money, pretty obvious, right? They do it for other rewards they get along the way. But the looks on some of these kids' faces when they realize that they're part of something, or that they've learned something, or that they're contributing something, and then probably the look on their parents' faces as well, there must be serious reward for you there.
Yes. For most of the staff, whether it be hospital staff or school staff, I think most of us have the feeling that we just can't wait to get to work every day. Almost every day we know it's going to be a good day. And then at the end of the day, we can say our students, we accomplished something today. There was active learning going on today.
Yeah, one of your colleagues there, Benny Nalepa, I hope I'm saying that right, says that during the summer, the place gets pretty quiet.
Yeah.
Pretty boring,
Yes.
frankly, and they are excited to have these kids back because they bring an energy and excitement, a positivity is the word she uses when these kids are around.
Yes, through individuals like Betty and many, many, many others, we've been able to cultivate a culture of really reciprocating returns, that we both are just benefiting from the opportunities that our students are given at the hospital program.
We're on the line today with Larry Semetko, one of the Joe Brighton Skills Center teachers at Henry Ford Wyandotte Hospital in Michigan, talking about plugging kids in that have challenges, that have some limited skill sets in some areas, but have the opportunity to contribute and become part of something. And I guess plugging them in, creating that hope and that opportunity, Larry, is probably as big a factor in all this as anything else. I mean, for some of their parents, I mean, they do wonder, is my child going to be okay after I'm gone? And I think you give them at least peace of mind in some way.
Yeah, that is a really, really big concern. Like coming up in this end of this month, our school always sponsors an agency fair that we bring in all the various community health agencies so that they can start working with the individual and their families to transition into the community after they leave school.
Yeah, which is, obviously if they can transition to the community. And maybe it's not, out on their own, but maybe it's a group home. Maybe it's, some oversight, but some independence as well. Because let's be honest, independence and freedom, how important is that?
It really is. We work a great deal across the board at the school in regard to becoming contributing members of society, to become a registered voter, to become just an informed citizen, and to, a lot of times it's not always work for pay, but a lot of times they can work in other situations and still contribute to society or their community.
No, there you have it. Well, Larry, I think you're doing God's work, is what I think down there. And how does somebody find out more about what you have as far as opportunities there, or maybe finding out more about what might be in their area of the state?
They probably could contact the local school district or the local intermediate school district. The ARC is another very good resource. Community mental health services in their county, these would all be good starting points for them in regard to advocacy or programming.
Well, there you have it. Larry Semetko, thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Oh, and thank you now.
All right, have a great day. Larry Semetko, everybody, from the Joe Brighton Skills Center, a teacher there at Henry Ford Wyandotte Hospital. And, it takes a special kind of dedication from these teachers. So I think we should tip our hat to the folks that, are willing to roll up their sleeves. They're not doing it for the love of money. They're doing it for the love of education and for those students, make no mistake. It's 41 after the hour on a Monday. I'm Steve Gruber. This is The Steve Gruber Show.
Getting your day started with news from around the state and around the world. Common Sense Radio. This is The Steve Gruber Show.
Yeah, I mentioned this before. It's interesting that to the mainstream media, the news media out there, it's a general rule. Christians are free game every day. Every day. You can take shots and, clinging to their Bibles and their backwoods and their kind of, bumpkins. And then the Pope comes to town. And you have 24-hour wall-to-wall coverage. It kind of changes everything. It's kind of, there's some hypocrisy there as far as I'm concerned from the coverage of these events. But it was a big event, the Pope coming to the United States, the first South American Pope of Argentina. With us this morning, Ambassador Francis Rooney, former U.S. Ambassador to the Holy See. Of course, that's the Vatican. Ambassador, welcome back to the program.
Steve, thank you for having me back on.
It is kind of a curiosity to me that, you can turn on news outlets, for years and years, and they, take shots at Christians and this and that and Christianity and different things. And then the Pope comes to town. And then it's like a party. And they do wall-to-wall coverage, and they have, live events of blessings and mass and everything else. It just seems a little unusual to me, shall we say.
Well, it was definitely more coverage than the Pope usually gets when he's traveling around the world, and it would have been nice to have him say a few more things about the persecution of Christians, which you just mentioned. Yeah,
the persecution of Christians. I mean, in the Middle East, not a lot of Christians out there. But here's the thing: the Pope spending a lot of his time talking about, I don't know, climate change, income inequality. It almost sounded to a lot of folks, myself included, that he doesn't care much for capitalism or for, the free market and so forth. And I guess for some, they took issue with that. Am I off base there?
No, I think the Pope has said some very caustic and erroneous things about the role of free markets and capitalism as the best system yet devised to provide more goods and services to more people than anything else. But I think his problem there is he's skewed by his perspective as an Argentine, and they don't have the kind of capitalism down there that we have, but in many respects. And so I'm kind of hopeful that he learned a little bit when he was up here about how capitalism really could work. Well,
you wonder. And then, his other push, it's almost as if he was a, clergy for Barack Obama directly talking about climate change and so forth. I think that we have much bigger challenges facing ourselves than, climate change. But the Pope jumped right onto that bandwagon, and played right into the president's narrative as well. To me, I don't know if that's really, and I'm not Catholic, but I don't know if that's the Pope's, if that's his place on the field, if you will.
Well, historically, the Holy See has had this kind of philosophy of creation, going back to St. Thomas, and that as a result of God's creation, that all living things have an interrelationship. Pope Benedict used to call it the internal ecology of the world, I guess, and so there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, all living things do have a roles to play with each other, whether it's photosynthesis or life-death cycle of humans or whatever. But this Pope's taken it to an all-new level in that encyclical, where he's used, again, very caustic and conclusory language about the basis of climate change and the linking it strictly to CO2 emissions and not to some of the other factors as clearly. And he barely mentions, that the poorest countries are the ones that do the most polluting because they burn wood and coal and can't afford to burn clean fuels and things like that.
Well, here's the other thing that the mainstream news media is focused right on that. But when the Pope talks about, his opposition, if you will, to abortion or to same-sex marriage, the networks are like, well, in other news, they don't even cover it. It's like they look we want to talk about climate change, and the Pope says X, Y, and Z. But when it comes to gay marriage and abortion, here's something else for us to talk about. And they skip it. I mean, they totally skip it.
that's pretty typical of the media, isn't it? To focus on the things and this liberal agenda, to focus on the things they agree with and ignore the things they don't.
Well, you would think, but and maybe you're right. Maybe the Pope should have talked more about those particular items and his position, and more important, not just his position, the church's position. 1.2 billion Catholics worldwide, and maybe the church's position should have been clarified, because there was some comment here, and you remember this, Francis, Ambassador, that a conversation that the Pope said that same-sex marriage was okay. Some people tried to pass that off a year ago, not that long ago. Not the truth.
No, the church has not changed its doctrines. All the Pope has said is let's have a little more welcoming attitude and maybe a little less judgmental tone about these people that are still committing sins in the eyes of the church. Right,
but let's get them into the church so maybe we can, have an impact on them, I think was his point of view. You can't, churches were built for sinners, not saints, as far as I can tell. Ambassador Francis Rooney is here, former U.S. ambassador to the Holy See. All right, well, just, I guess, sum it up for me. What do you think the overall impact was? All right, the news coverage is disingenuous and hypocritical from time to time, but he did get a lot of coverage. He did see, Mass on television. Maybe the positive side of this is that he reached new people, potentially.
Oh, I absolutely think that the trip was a huge success, despite those shortcomings that we've been speaking about. He reached a lot of people. He created a huge amount of goodwill for the church and the role of the church in the world. I think he probably learned some things about America or United States that he certainly didn't know, that he can contrast to his familiar experience in Argentina. And I think I think it was historic that he spoke before Congress, that John Boehner's hugely important invitation that finally was accepted. I think Speaker Boehner's been inviting people for like 25 years.
Yeah, and it finally was accepted. And then Boehner decided that he had had an epiphany there when the Pope was in town and resigned.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
So there was some positive of the Pope coming. Boehner's leaving. See, that's a big positive as far as a lot of people are concerned, myself being one of those. But overall, you'd say a big success.
Yeah, I think it was, and I think that, like I say, the most important take-home from this thing is, I think, maybe perhaps his understanding of the United States. Yeah. Because we're a hugely important country to the world and to the Catholic Church.
There you go. Well, Ambassador, greatly appreciate your time and joining us here. I'm sure we'll talk sometime soon.
Thanks for having me on.
There you have it. Ambassador Francis Rooney, everybody, former U.S. ambassador to the Holy See. Of course, that's the Vatican. And kind of our inside man when it comes to all things Catholic. 52 after on a Monday. It's the Steve Gruber Show.